Welcome to Starfleet Boy. Audience, please attend carefully. There are lots of spoilers for Star Trek in general. And we're back on another exciting episode of Starfleet Boy, where we have a casual and informal conversation about Star Trek. Today we're focused on Season 7 of Star Trek The Next Generation. Still. We ended our discussion series yesterday, so it was a milestone, Doctor. I know you like to...
It was.
I know that you like to say it's not over till it's over, but there was a kind of... There was a kind of...
It was very festive, yeah.
It was festive.
We had guest stars and cameos
cop. And things like that. It was true. It was a very...
No, continuity cop, sorry.
That's cop. Right. Canon cop, he's called.
Canon cop.
I wish he were continuity cop, because I care more about continuity than I do about canon.
Oh.
I do. I care more about continuity than I care about canon.
I'm going to remember that.
So is the audience. We're live. I did no preparation for this except that I am going to show Gary's beautiful artwork during our discussion as we go back through this season, because we haven't done that in a while, because we haven't had this form factor available to us. But now we do. So
all right. I made some minor notes.
Oh, good.
Just because it's a lot to unpack. But of course, the season started with... Now, what I always like to look at is how many people have an episode. Is it a Worf episode? Is it a Picard episode? I like to count those things, and I also like to see who are the characters that return from previous seasons. And
I forgot that. You shame me. I've forgotten all of these cool things that you do. We haven't done that. This is
the whole point of the season, And then if we can pick up a theme, obviously the theme for this is clearly family, because we have so many family members just popping out.
We even said that in our jokes when we would joke about this season at our lunch discussions back in high school. We would call it the season of, almost rolling our eyes a little bit. Yeah. I think that this is the season where everyone.
I did roll my eyes.
I don't remember. I probably laughed. I know I would have laughed. I would have found the humor in it, but I probably rolled my eyes too. But yeah, you're right. This is the season of family. But I kind of love it now that I'm an old man. I'm in a different place. Doctor, I'm in a different place in my life, and I kind of love that aspect of this season. But anyways, we'll talk about that as we go along.
All right. So, of course, we started off with the ending of a two-parter.
Oh, hold on. Let me pull up the images. Here we go.
Okay.
Logos and channel art, episode art. Everything's in organized fashion on Starfleet Boy, so we gotta do it this way. All right, here we go. Oh, I didn't open them all. Damn it, Starfleet Boys.
Unprepared
here. Hold on. Keep talking, Doctor. We can't.
All right. So I'll talk. So of course we start off the season with Descent, which is clearly a Data episode, and we have the theme of family because we've got Data's brother, and I think it's most noteworthy now because it has direct ties to Picard. That's a great graphic right there, by the way.
We are focusing today. We're using this opportunity to focus on the artwork of one of our greatest patrons on Starfleet Boy, which is Gary, who's also known as Trekker Prize. So please go check him out and subscribe to his channel and subscribe to Rock Tiger. Go to rocktigerdesign.com, I think, I think that's what it's called. Look up Rock Tiger Design on Google. You'll find Gary. But yeah, he's an amazing designer, graphic designer. He is responsible for the look and feel of the whole run of Starfleet Boy for the last 4 years. years, and we love it. So, anyways, yes, Descent Part
That's
2.
you, right?
That's Hugh.
That's Hugh.
Did you know that there was an iteration of All Good Things that involved a Borg timeline, and it involved Hugh coming back, much like what happened in Picard?
Yeah. This is
It's
definitely an episode that resonates a little more now because of Picard, and here we have, Hugh, who is of course a character from previous season who returned, as well as Lore. So definitely.
And so far as we're concerned, in terms of television and Star Trek on television, this is the last appearance of Lore. We don't know what happens to Lore after this.
This is the last we see of Lore. All right, and then next we have Liaisons, which I would...
Here we go. Yay!
There we go. And I would say this is a Picard episode. What would you say?
Yes, because we do spend that time with him on the fake crash site, and this ambassador here that we see depicted in the graphic. Yeah, I'd give it to Picard for sure.
Give it to Picard. So all right, so we start.
That was not an episode I think that I would go. I still to this day don't regularly go back to it. It's interesting when you're watching it. I remember the idea of the ambassadors. That was the highlight of that episode. But I liked it. I think I liked it anyways. Yeah. Well, I don't remember my episode of Starfleet Boys, so I don't remember what I gave it.
I don't know if I'm on it, but I know I personally don't like the episode that much.
This was a cool episode because now some of the technological concepts are like actually things that are in development. But I think you didn't like it because it's Geordi's mom, or was that? I don't remember.
Oh, I don't like it because it's Geordi's mom. I don't like it because it's just a bad episode. I think it's a dumb episode. But as you,
I pushed hard for the value of this episode being in the the interface itself. But I liked, again, Old Man Sohail, Starfleet Boy, really likes the family stuff, and I like the whole. I like the performance and even the storyline of Geordi and his mother, and Starfleet Boy is a mama's boy, true, and so there's a lot of personal attachment to this story for me. I remember
2 big guest stars in this one, obviously playing Geordi's mom and dad, and
Ben Vereen.
Ben Vereen was his dad, which we both have a personal connection to Ben Vereen growing up.
Zoobly Zoo.
He had that show.
Among other things.
Yes. And that's him in that show, 10 Speed and Gumshoe, I think, or it's him and Jeff Goldblum. He plays like a con artist, and Jeff Goldblum wants to be a private detective, and
I don't remember that. I don't think I ever experienced that.
Yeah, Ben Vereen has a great career.
How do I make this full screen? Oh, I know. I just figured it out. Look.
Go for it. There we go.
Look at that.
Excellent. So.
Oh, are we?
Well, no, I was just going to say definitely a Geordi episode. And I think the only Geordi episode, really Geordi-centered episode this season, sadly. So I
Is it?
I believe so. We'll find out, but I think it is. And I lament the fact that it is. He's a great character. He could have had more.
He does get more, I feel, in the films, but you're right. I think it's interesting that LeVar Burton, who was definitely the biggest star, who still is the biggest star on in the world, he's like one of the biggest stars. He and Patrick Stewart, I think, are like neck and neck there if we're doing comparisons, which we're not. But he took a second seat. He gave the starring role to the man himself, to Patrick Stewart, and it was really interesting.
He was the most, definitely he was the big name going.
I actually wish that we we have like the bandwidth or the ability to have Star Trek LaForge, Star Trek Crusher. I don't know why, but I like really like the idea of like exploring the same events through the perspective of all these different characters. You know, like I know you can't do a whole show for every character, but it would be nice if every character got like a side project or something like that. It would be very
well,
cool.
something that I mean, we can discuss.
Or a cluster. You could have a cluster of characters, like, you know, Geordi and Dr. Crusher could be, you know, the main kind of, you know, characters in one series, and then you could have Worf and, you know, maybe some DS9 characters, like, you know, but like kind of led by Worf, kind of led by someone. Yeah, I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud here.
No, I think, well, a couple of similar thoughts to you is I'm a big fan of the audio dramas that they do for Doctor Who, where they allow the actors to come back and play their parts, you know, back in the time that they were playing the parts. And I think everybody's voice is definitely up to par, and we could definitely have audio adventures set aboard the D and expand more on Geordi, on characters that, you know, didn't get as much attention as they did during the original run. And I would personally would love to see that. And then there's animation. You know, now you know, we're gonna have the Lower Decks.
I mean,
which
you
is
could
kind of more comedic, but I would love to see a more dramatic animated presentation where maybe we could bring back.
You could do so much.
You could do so much, and these actors are great. The characters are fantastic, and I'm going to throw one more thing.
Speaking of which, wait, I just want to give another compliment to this graphic. We're also complimenting Gary's beautiful artwork, but he chose to put Data and Geordi in the image, and you know, I almost forgot about this, but like that was also, I thought, a highlight of the episode, and I may have not given it enough attention in the first discussion, but like this image definitely evokes and reminds me that like Geordi was like putting Data's friendship he was really straining their friendship with his request to like go into danger, and Data still did it, and that's a pretty heavy thing that, you know, kind of paints a picture of a potential relationship in the future.
Yeah, for sure. But what I was going to say is that, you know, since this is the last season discussion for Next Generation, one new topic of conversation we can have is what a shame that we didn't have Geordi show up in any subsequent series. I mean, he had opportunities to certainly show up in Deep Space Nine, and I would have, and maybe, you know, even Voyager. I mean, Barclay came back. Obviously, it would have been great if, you know, maybe Geordi could have been hanging around there at somewhere, helping bring the Voyager back. I would love to see Geordi come back, and now, of course, with Picard, the show, we finally
there's
have
a strong. We're spending a lot of time on this episode. I think it's fantastic.
Sorry.
But there is a strong, like not rumor, I don't want to call it, but just like a strong kind of like hope among the circles I jaunt among that like LeVar Burton is coming back in season 2. So I'm very hopeful that we'll see LeVar Burton back as Geordi very soon. And I think I hope those those rumblings turn into realities.
Great. Next we have Gambit.
Part 1 and Part 2. We got to talk about both at the same time, because we don't do parts on Starfleet Way. Or did we?
Yeah, we might have. But
there's a graphic
for this purpose we will. And this is definitely a Picard Riker episode. I guess I would give it a slightly more of an edge to Picard, but it's definitely a Picard Riker combo, which is interesting. And do we have a graphic for this one?
Oh, are you not seeing it?
To. No, I'm not.
Oh, hold on. Thanks. Starfleet Boy's having technical difficulties. There we go.
That's a great.
That's
shot
part
right
2.
there.
Hold on.
Wow, look at that.
And then wait, we have part
What a
1.
badass.
There we go.
He's a great actor. I forget his name, but he's one of my favorite guest stars from this time. He always plays a villain. He's a great actor.
Starfleet Boy can't look him up right now. He's having tea.
It's all right. It's okay. We don't have to.
Starfleet Boy's hand is occupied with tea.
Definitely
it was a great performance.
Up the action quotient on this one, and I think I always felt this was kind of getting the audience ready for the movies, in the sense that we have to see the captain as more of an action hero type. And I know that's something Patrick Stewart wanted to pursue, was be more of an action man. And I think we got it in this one.
We definitely did. I like this episode. I don't think it's another. Again, it's not another. It's one of those. Sadly, it's not an episode or a two-parter that I go back to very often. Wasn't there something going on in the background with Worf, or am I thinking of another episode?
I don't remember.
Oh, okay.
Why do you think that two-parter doesn't stand out?
I think that it's just because that idea was...
You don't like the idea of the story? Space pirates?
I just think that like the Enterprise crew going undercover kind of crosses into like James Bond territory, if you will. And actually, yeah. Or Mission Impossible, and actually, no joke, like Patrick Stewart sells it, and that's the only reason I care about this is because I could see him being a Bond or a Bond villain. Like I could see him being like, carrying off like that kind of role. Like he's great. He has such a gravitas, especially at this time in his performing career. So I could have seen it, but it just falls short for me because I think the idea is just it just didn't catch on. But I don't remember. I think I liked it. I still like this episode. I mean, I think I remember liking the ship, and the action sequences were superb in it. There was that cool new phaser blast angle. So on a technical level, it was probably very exciting. I remember things like that about it, but.
So next we got Phantasms. Okay, this is a great graphic because it opens up the question: is this a Data episode or a Troy episode, or is it both?
That's a really good question. I always see it as a Data episode, but
Troy's the one who's figuring it out, isn't it? Isn't she?
Yeah. And we have Data inadvertently dreaming in this episode, and I think that kind of is why it kind of... I felt like that was more interesting a story than the whole... what were they called? The little... The infection that everyone had.
I don't remember.
See, you don't even remember. It's a Data episode.
It's a Data episode. Okay.
It's a Data episode. But we do get a great Troy episode
before
next.
We turn to Dark Page here. I think a theme I am beginning to see here with the season is that, and it's something that I think I didn't give it enough credit for at the time, and I'm certainly seeing it now, is that I think they were a little more adventurous with the types of stories they were trying to tell. There's a lot of wacky concepts. I mean, certainly this episode has imagery that we don't expect to see in the Next Generation episode. And like you said, the two-parter, it wasn't your cup of tea because you just don't see the Next Generation crew doing that kind of thing. I like that you're doing the movements, though, like the Kirk. Like the yes.
Wait, you got to react to the punch. Hold on, ready? All right, here. Now you do it to me. That was a good uppercut. All right.
Okay. So now let us turn to Dark Page.
All right.
Oh,
Sorry. All right, Dark Page. I thought this was. If I didn't think it at the time of the discussion, I definitely think it now after seeing Counselor Troy in Picard. So I'm tainted by Picard as usual. But the fact that they named their daughter Kestra and like her significance now in Star Trek, like to me, this episode got elevated because of Picard. But I think I enjoyed it too. I always really loved how serious Majel Barrett's performance at the time meant something powerful, because I knew it was out of the norm for this character to be this way. And she really does a great job. I think she had already done her DS9 visit, but at this point, I'm not remembering. I don't know if she had. Are you sure?
Yeah.
So this was her second round at it, but still, it was still very impactful, because that was also impactful, and I remember that to this day is the performance she gave in Deep Space Nine, as Odo turns into a puddle of goo, in her lap. So I think that these episodes are already special because of Majel Barrett. Now that she's no longer available to us as an audience. But yeah, it was really, now this episode is sort of like, I feel like it's become a very important episode to view and rewatch.
The second 7th season episode to resonate a little bit more because of Picard. Definitely Descent Part 2, there's elements there that bleed into Picard, and now this one into Nepenthe. And well, as you just said, the return and the last appearance of Troy's mother, on the show. On this show,
yeah, exactly.
On this
show. It's her exit stage right. Isn't that the correct
it's
term,
her exit stage right on Star Trek, and probably next to the one with David Ogden Stier is probably her best episode.
Yeah.
And definitely I think Sirtis's best turn in this show. It's a very good, very sad story. And that's a great graphic.
Yeah, it is. And for Counselor Troy, this graphic was created pre-Picard. Gary, great job as usual.
Yeah.
So there you see Kestra, and she's an important figure, at least to me. I want to know a lot more about the Riker Troys, and or the Troy Rikers, I think they're called. And I'd love to see stories about them. And I think, this is just a silly idea, but MacGyver in space, and it's Jonathan Frakes, it's Riker and Kestra. It's
wow. The spin-offs just never end with you, man.
No, I know, it's true. I got a lot of work for these actors. I don't know.
Let's get Pasteur off the ground first, okay? Let's stay the course. So another family episode, of course. And here we have... No, go ahead. We're going to Attached.
Attached, okay.
Yeah, Attached.
Love this episode. I loved it. I loved it now.
I'm not as attached to it as you are. Even though it presents, the episode angers me.
Oh, what did I? Your anger made me flip.
Because I become a force of nature. I'm angry. I feel it just missed opportunities. Definitely, just come to mind when I see that episode. 6 seasons of missed opportunities, and I really don't buy the explanation ultimately that we get.
What's the term the kids use these days? I stan for Picard and Crusher. So to me, this is like...
You ship them?
I ship and stan.
I shipped them long before anybody else did.
You did? Well, no, we weren't shipping them. They were shipped themselves, as we discover in All Good Things.
Right.
Yeah,
well, season 1, they definitely had...
There's since the beginning. It's been there. It's been there for sure.
They dropped it, and now they brought it back just because it's the last season, and let's finally call attention to this thing that nobody seems to want to acknowledge. But
This is a beautiful graphic, Gary. I know, I know the audience will agree. Audience, let us know in the comments below what you think of our graphics, our the work of art that's so beautiful that Trekker Prize creates. It's very nice.
So, Force of Nature is an episode.
Oh wait, hold on. There's a
Go
technical difficulty. There we go.
I don't remember this episode at all. I have no idea what episode this is.
This is the warp speed limit episode. It's the brother and sister scientist team.
Is there a family member of somebody on in this episode?
I'm trying to remember, but I don't think so.
See, I don't. Okay, I have no memory of this episode, and probably it's a good thing.
So I just want to point out that
it looks pretty, though. That's the really nice graphic.
Was in response to. Do you remember what it was in response to in real life?
No, I don't even remember the episode, so I don't know what real life event it responded.
I feel this was Star Trek's attempt at making commentary on the overuse of resources on our planet, like travel, jets, and things like that, and so that to remember that everything has an impact on the environment. So they used warp speed as a kind of like a I don't know. That's what I got. I thought it was the environmental episode, and I liked it. So I remember feeling the message at the time, but I do remember everyone else thinking it was ridiculous that there's a warp speed limit, and it probably is.
I remember being. It's funny. I remember being upset at the warp speed limit, but I don't remember the episode itself. So I don't know what the context of the. But yeah.
Force of Nature, everyone.
Another relative.
I love this episode. Yes, it's Juliana Tainer, aka Juliana Soong.
Data's mom,
but the twist is she's actually an android version of Data's mom, so she actually is so important to understanding what happened in Picard, and you have to look at Jean-Luc as the most advanced model of what she represents. So the real as we call her, Juliana Soong, died tragically as they were escaping the crystalline entity. So we get the completion of that cool story.
Is that in this episode too?
Yeah.
So that's another return. There we go. This is another villain that returns. The crystalline entity.
Oh, but the entity doesn't come in the episode. It's mentioned. So I don't think it...
Oh, okay. All right.
You haven't seen this episode in a while, have you?
No.
Well,
I wasn't on this one, so
I highly recommend it. I think it's worth a revisit if you have an extra. I'm getting the no from the doc.
Yeah, when we do the remastered versions of our reviews, maybe I'll rewatch it. The holo conversions or something.
Starfleet Boy will remaster these one day when we have like 4K technology available to us. But at this moment, you'll have to enjoy us in 720p, everybody. But anyways, I like this episode because it kind of explains the technology behind and the feasibility of what Jean-Luc Picard is, which I think we could do a whole episode of Starfleet Boy just talking about what is Jean-Luc Picard in the Picard era. What is he now?
A third episode that resonates from season 7 in Picard.
Mm-hmm. Parallels.
I did not watch this one, and I don't remember this one at all. But I assume it's a Worf episode.
It is a Worf episode.
Okay.
This is the one where Worf is traveling. He's essentially doing what Jean-Luc does in All Good Things.
But Q doesn't show up and congratulate Worf.
It's true.
Microbrain! You've proven the Klingons' worth to continue exploring the universe.
We didn't talk about this at length in our All Good Things discussion, but in the future that doesn't happen, in the anti-time future, the Klingon Empire had actually taken over the Romulan
The
Empire.
Romulans. Yes.
So there was no supernova in that future or in that timeline, but the Romulan Empire still fell to the Klingon Empire, and so it's also understood that like kind of the tension between the Klingon Empire and the Federation was back to Kirk film era levels. So I don't know what was going on, but it was pretty interesting. Interesting.
Now, I do want to. Now, this is only from a still. Like I said, I don't remember watching the episode, but I believe there is a Cardassian officer in the parallel universe on board the Enterprise.
I think
so
that's this episode.
I want to point that out because one of the big things that I've that I feel is that the Romulans sort of got pushed aside slightly. They were promoted to be the big bad of Next Generation, but then they were kind of swept away. The Borg kind of swept them away. But also the Cardassians. The Cardassians take a firmer foothold in the regular baddie that shows up. And in this episode, the appearance of a Cardassian is sort of equivalent to the appearance of a Klingon in Next Generation to someone from the old generation. Like, oh my God, there's a Klingon here? That means we're okay with the Klingons now? And the same thing with a Cardassian. That's also kind of shocking. Oh my God, a Cardassian on the Enterprise? So just wanted to point that little...
Do you see the show Picard going in the direction of Jean-Luc being somehow reinstated in command of Starfleet, and there's like some kind of, return to service for Jean-Luc, or do you think it's going to not go in that direction?
One thing that the rewatch reminded me, and that I'm really surprised that Picard didn't pick up on, is the idea of him as ambassador. They refer to him as ambassador, and this is not the only time that we see Picard in a future scenario where he's an ambassador. I also point to the Riker episode where he's trapped by the Romulans and they're making him think that it's the future. Picard is an ambassador, and starting from that point, I think the show was gearing us towards this idea that instead of being an admiral, which is what Kirk became, right, Picard's path is he's going to be an ambassador, like Spock. Okay, people refer to Spock after a certain point as Ambassador Spock, even though he probably is an admiral. They don't refer to him as admiral; they refer to him as Ambassador Spock, and that is the I guess I don't know if you want to call it a rank but that's what they refer to him as. And I'm surprised that Picard, the show, did not pick up on that. He is referred to as admiral. His admiralcy is something that is brought up a lot more, and not the idea of ambassador, even though clearly what he did in help trying to save the Romulan Empire must have been a master stroke of ambassadorship.
I think Q really messed Jean-Luc up in All Good Things, and he became the War Picard, to use another story's myth. But he became Picard. The War Picard, and I think that's why he sacrificed his ambassador path, that potential, to become more of a defender, if you will, at the very most noblest, in the most noblest form.
Perhaps Picard will show him returning to
his true nature, I think, of ambassador.
His true destiny.
His destiny, yeah.
And again, I bring up the link between him and Spock. In some ways, Picard is not only the successor to Kirk in the sense that he commanded the Enterprise,
right?
But he's also successor to Spock in the sense that he is, he is interested in similar themes that Spock was interested in, especially with the Romulan cause. So
excellent. All that from Parallels.
I don't know how relevant it is, but it's interesting. Yeah, whatever.
I think
Okay.
it's only relevant in that this was, I think, a little test run for the concept of hopping around different timelines
True.
and making
True enough.
audiences
True enough.
comfortable with that.
True enough.
Good job, Worf.
Good job.
This is a phenomenal episode. We all agree.
This is a 10, by the way. It was not on this discussion, but it's a 10.
It's a 10.
It is a 10 in every
I remember that very well.
alternate version of me. It's always a 10.
It's always a 10. Yeah, it's one of those episodes that I think we went so far as to call it like a fixed point in Star Trek or something like that. You know, it's like it's a profound episode. There's so much going on,
sure.
and Riker we can agree that this is a Riker.
It's a Riker episode.
Okay,
this is the last Riker episode.
It's his biggest win as far as I'm concerned as a character. It was the most. It was his. Of course, we get him and Deanna, which is another great, kind of win milestone, if you will. It's but this was ultimate. This was really cool thing, and just from a moral perspective, it's an amazing episode to observe and talk about. So I love it.
Yeah, excellent. And of course, the graphic points to one of the best guest stars.
That tea's strong.
On the whoa.
I know. I just burped on screen.
I didn't even hear it.
Oh, good.
I didn't even hear it. One of the better guest stars, but you did disappear though. I don't know if you know that.
Oh, it's highlighting you. I handed it.
Oh, because I'm okay.
Well, I handed it over to the AI, and so it just took over, and it. so AI is doing a bad job. Humbert, Doctor says. Dr. AI is doing a shitty job. All right, go on. Sorry.
The great Terry O'Quinn, I believe.
Yes.
And of
Who's
course,
pictured here?
most people today know him as Locke from Lost, but we know him way before that
as Admiral Pressman.
Admiral Pressman. He's also Howard Hughes in The Rocketeer. He's just a very accomplished actor.
Hey, do they go to space in The Rocketeer?
No.
Okay, someone was teasing me. I haven't seen The Rocketeer since I was a kid, and they were like, "No, sorry, my mistake. It was Rocket Man." They were talking about Rocket Man. Never mind. Scratched from the record.
Okay, it's scratched. Okay. So next we have Homeward, and this is also a family-oriented episode.
I love this episode. It's a Worf episode, but it's also a Paul Sorvino episode.
Well, it is a Paul Sorvino episode.
It's true.
Anything with Paul Sorvino
is a Paul Sorvino episode. Yes.
Yeah.
But I love Paul Sorvino, and I just thought it was. I don't know how Michael Dorn feels about it, but I would think it's a real coup to have worked with Paul Sorvino.
Yeah. I still lament that this is really obscure, but when Raymond Burr passed away, he had those Perry Mason movies that were running, and the producers of the movies entertained the idea of continuing the Perry Mason, I guess you can call it continuity, but without the actor. And what they did is that they just had sort of the supporting cast go to another character, and Paul Sorvino played another sort of, defense attorney who was very flamboyant, and I think that would have been...
What was his name? Do you remember?
Oh, I don't remember, but I mean, I think he had appeared in a previous Perry Mason movie, but then
I vaguely remember that my parents watched that show. I almost am certain my parents watched that show, and I might have caught glimpses of it. I know what you're talking about.
He was great. So it was him with the Perry Mason cast from the movies, I'm saying, and I thought it was great. But he's a great actor. And also in The Rocketeer, I just realized.
Oh wow!
So 2 Rocketeer episodes, 2 Rocketeer actors back to back, because he's the mob.
It's no joke that TNG drew, at this point anyways, was drawing really great talent as guest stars.
I'll never forget when I saw, and this is an earlier season, when I saw Gene Simmons in the drumhead. When I realized, oh my God, that's Gene Simmons from Spartacus. And, I've brought down bigger people than you, Picard. And I was like,
Yeah, she's
holy
great.
crap, this is amazing.
Isn't it great that the order in All Good Things, the initial orders giving the ship to Picard that he reads are signed Admiral Nora Satie. So she actually signed the orders.
Huh.
And they put that in the past. Did you not notice that? Did I just
I didn't pick up on that. I didn't pick up on that. No.
I think I mentioned it yesterday in our discussion, but we were talking about a lot of things. But
wow.
Yeah, so that was something that I thought was really wonderful. A nice touch.
That's cool. I didn't know. I didn't pick up.
Yeah.
Didn't even pick up on that. Wow.
There you go. Starfleet boy for the win. Yes.
That's why you're a Starfleet boy. That's why you run the show. That's why you run the show.
It's not a competition, audience, but
no.
But what did you think of the episode? Do you remember?
I was there. Yeah, we did. Yeah, I loved it. I think it's a great episode.
I think it was a great episode.
Yeah.
I love this episode.
Oh, I love the graphic.
For the reasons, yes, I love this episode, but not for any reasons that are rational. There's just...
Yeah, we're the only two who love this episode.
It's so funny.
In this timeline. I think there was a timeline where more people liked it, but it's been erased.
It's true. I do think that's true. We're in that bubble.
We're in the bubble.
We got to look for that light. And now it's turning into a Rolling Stones song. I think they should do a music video set to Sub Rosa for their next virtual music video. Rolling Stones. That's a request from a longtime fan. Anyways,
I'll call Keith up. By the way, that was also a family episode because it had her grandmother, who does actually appear in the episode, even though she's dead.
It's true. Oh, jeez. And I think her name was Patricia Howard, if I'm not mistaken. So we learned a lot about Dr. Crusher's backstory. Also, just that's probably one of the things that I don't know if we put it so succinctly, but at least for me, I loved her backstory, and we were both fans of Captain Crusher enough to have an idea for a whole show when we were our post TNG depression was filled with meetings and where we made a show.
We made a show. Yeah.
We made a show. It was great.
Which now in our elder years, we now know that if we had ever pitched the show to her, she would have said, "It's charming."
She may have liked our show.
She would have. Yeah. She would have said we were charming and would have.
We're ready, just so that you know, we are ready to pitch that show. I think I still have all my notes.
I have all my notes. I'm ready.
All my notes too. So whenever you want to hear about Star Trek Pasteur,
we're here. We're here for you.
But even if it comes true, not of our designs, I want to see Gates McFadden come back to Star Trek. I would love to. I was really disappointed. That was one of my disappointments of season 1. I know you can't have it all. I think that I like the way that I like the vision or like the plan that seems to be going on. But yes, I was lamenting that
they're saving the best for last. You know that.
That's true, but. It'd be nice to hear about her. We heard about Geordi. We kind of got a mention of Worf.
Suspense, man. It's all about the suspense.
She wasn't there. We didn't hear about her.
One quick thing. In the novelization, in the alternate future, that's where they were married, was Picard and Crusher on that planet.
Oh, that makes sense. He was taken by the planet.
Who isn't?
I know, it's actually great. It's like the whole planet is Scotland. It's true.
Even alien races become Scots when they come there. I mean, it's like, I'm sure Duncan MacLeod is somewhere on that planet.
I think we should become Scotsmen on Starfleet Boy.
I think we should.
I think we should.
Let me tell you, Emma has always. She's always had a thing where she wants me to show up in a kilt one day, and I might surprise her one day and do that.
I was convinced in my youth that I had Scottish. This was something I made up in my head, but I was convinced that I had Scottish descendants.
Blood, really?
Like blood. You know, it was mainly centered around my love of like Highlander. But when I did my genetic thing, there is, it's like 100% effectively. I'm from India, which is correct when you look at our family, like our roster. Like, you know, when you look at the family roster, it makes sense. But there is this like weird European branch that it's constantly changing. So as more people do tests, like it narrows down, right? So I'm hoping that branch ends in Scotland.
Somewhere,
I hope that, like, yeah. I hope my little childhood, like, peregrinations about being Scottish come true in this weird, magnificent way. But more than likely, in reality, it looks like it's Ashkenazi merchants that it's gonna point to more than 1,000 years ago.
It's amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
It's amazing we can do that.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
The roots of Starfleet Boy.
I'll find those ancestors and travel back in time and let them know what to invest in. Remember.
So we go from the least liked to one of the most well-liked episodes of this
Lower
season.
Decks.
Lower Decks, which
has spawned a Star Trek spin-off in a weird way.
In a weird way.
But it makes sense. There was a comedic undertone to the episode. And the idea is there was a lot of comedy through some of the trials and, you know, troubles that the Lower Decks personnel go through on a daily basis, just like the stress of not knowing what to say to Commander Riker, or, you know, like these are all humorous to us because we always see the show from the perspective of the bridge crew, so we rarely see it from this perspective. So it was an experimental episode, even in its time. It was a standout even in its time, as I recall.
Well, once again, the show in its last season trying something very different than it has before, and this is something that they should have done much earlier. I'm glad they finally did it, and this is also an episode where we feature a character returning from a previous season. In the case of the Bajoran ensign, who was from the episode with Wesley. I forget the one with Boothby. I forget the name of the episode. Or is it the one with Boothby, or is it? I don't remember. But I know it's the one where Wesley gets in trouble.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so you're it's, yes, absolutely. It is the same episode. I don't know if I think Boothby is in that episode. I'm pretty sure he is.
I don't remember.
But this is Ensign Sito, yes. And this is a very poignant moment because I remember, you know, we were all like kind of like, they all effed up. And, you know, the exchanges between Ensign Sito and Picard in this episode are very powerful. I think powerfully performed by the two performers.
Yeah. And also I want to point out that this is another instance of the Cardassians as the big bad. This is not, you know, the Romulans are not the ones that are, you know, the one that you have to, we got to take this ensign because it has to match this or whatever. It's the Cardassians. So again, the Cardassians sort of build their presence in Star Trek, and especially in Next Generation.
I just burped on camera again. That's so terrible.
Oh, that was audible. I'm sorry to
Good
inform
grief.
you.
I have to edit now.
Good grief, Charlie Brown.
That was terrible. I just realized I ate breakfast a long time ago, and so, audience, that's why my tummy is grumbling.
Oh, you need to have lunch. I've had lunch already.
I know. I can't believe I skipped lunch, but there was a lot of chores to do in the house today.
Oh,
so.
I know how that goes. One more thing. My last reference to the novelization, I think, the guy who has trouble with Riker, the one who he thinks Riker doesn't like him. I forget what his name is.
Right.
He shows up in the novelization in the future.
All Good Things?
He's in the future timeline,
Wow.
and he's actually working for Riker. He's on board the Enterprise.
The Enterprise. That's great.
Yeah.
I don't think he was in the background in All Good Things.
It's just in the novelization. Yeah.
I remember thinking when I was watching All Good Things that there was a lot of production put into it. Like there were a lot of extra characters and things like that. But then when you watch Generations, you realize it's like the Enterprise suddenly became like from a crew of 1,000 to like a crew of like 10,000. Like it was there was a lot of people everywhere in Generations that were never there on the show before. It's true.
I know. Oh, we're both gonna, okay. Cheers.
Cheers. That's an interesting synchronization that just happened, audience.
I know. That was totally unplanned.
This is the next Rolling Stone music video. They're going to use our video and sing over this video. That's what this is. And that moment of synchronization will go down in history. Beautiful graphic.
So what do we have next? Yes, it is a beautiful graphic. Yeah.
Beautiful.
What do we have
graphic.
next?
I love looking at this graphic. Okay. Thine Own Self.
Thine Own Self. A Data
Awesome
episode.
Yep.
If I ever saw one.
But it also, to your question earlier, when we were faced with this before and we were asked, was it a Data and Troy episode? There is the Troy command story that's going on in the background. And that pays off in the films, I think.
Wow, completely forgot that.
You're so terrible.
But I'm glad you reminded me. Okay, so then you know what? Something to think about as we look at these episodes. How are they preparing for the movie?
Right.
Clearly, this is a step. I think I mentioned it in the discussion. Definitely, I think this was a thought as to, okay, how do we make Troy more formal so that it makes sense as to why she's on the bridge and why she's in a part of this crew, what her role is. Definitely this is a nod towards the future in the films.
I love
but
this
other
episode.
than that, it's a Data episode for sure.
Of course, another Data episode, definitely a Data episode.
I would argue that actually.
And Picard, I know.
I believe I said it is a Brent Spiner episode.
We had some kind of a.
But it
there's
is
some kind of a deal. We made a deal that day.
We made a deal on that one. Yeah,
it's true.
Yeah,
I forget the nature of it, but you're absolutely right. There's a twin star situation going on. Here. It's a binary. It's a binary star system. This episode, in terms of who the star of it is. So I give
for
you
the
that.
record, I think Picard should have been patted on the back by Q for this one. This was not an easy puzzle to figure out. Now that's going to be my theme. Now, every time that Q should have just popped out and said, "Good one, Picard. You figured it out." This was a really tough one. And everybody was looking at him like, "What? What are you talking?" Like this is Picard's show all the way.
It's true. I agree.
Yeah.
He uses his skills.
His skills.
Does he do that in Picard for you? Does he get to this level?
Only in the no. Only in the first couple episodes. There's some sleuthing going on with the Romulan caretaker, where they're trying to figure out the clues and all that stuff. But no, I didn't feel we got the
sleuth,
the full Picard, so to speak, that we saw here.
Oh, hold on, we're having technical difficulties again. Sorry, audience. All right, here we go. Eye of the Beholder. This is an interesting episode because it gives us a backstory on the Enterprise itself. It's a murder mystery, is it? Like I don't know what to call it. Like a psychic.
And Troy.
It's a psychic murder mystery. That's how
It's a psychic murder mystery.
Which is a real genre, or I don't know, a trope. Is it a trope or a genre? It's a real thing.
I think it's a genre. Yeah.
What was that show? A great show. I never got to really watch it, but the few episodes I watched were pretty great. But it was like a
Profiler.
Maybe or Medium, something like that.
Yeah,
I'm
Medium.
Not sure.
I know.
Patricia
Medium,
Arquette.
Yeah.
Which one was Patricia
Medium.
Arquette? I like that show. I love Patricia Arquette. I think that was a great show.
So this was Medium in the future.
This was.
It makes you wonder how many dead bodies are in these ships that are flying around.
That's so true. It kind of tainted my idea of the perfect, perfect universe in the future. It was a really weird episode.
The roots of Picard, of the darker Starfleet, were being planted here.
Well, it's definitely an experimental episode, and it's a one-off. It's not one that I never remember that this episode specifically belongs to season 7 in any kind of way. It doesn't really like close anyone's story out or extend it.
Troy and Worf, I think their relationship.
Oh yes, that's true. That was where it started budding in this episode. That was the win of this episode for sure.
Right, because Worf is with another woman for some reason, and Troy reacts. So then we start seeing, oh, wait a minute, there's a thing, and that I think is a carry.
Just to be fair to poor Worf, he was working with her, but she was hallucinating.
Well, it was in her mind. So,
yeah, exactly.
I mean, it wasn't even real. So it's Worf is neither. It doesn't matter. Worf didn't do it,
man. Poor Troy.
Poor Worf.
Deanna's always getting basically really attacked, mind attacked. She's got.
Yeah, I know.
This poor woman. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, God.
She seems all right in Nepenthe. She seems safe on Nepenthe.
Thank goodness. Thank goodness. She made it. So next we have another avant-garde episode. I think this is a whole crew episode, really. If you want to call it that.
You could just reward this episode to itself.
Yes.
I think it's one of those episodes where it just gets it is Genesis.
It is Genesis.
Genesis episode allowed is not. It's episode forbidden.
Oh wow. I love that episode.
It was more interesting watching it for this project, for this endeavor, than it was, I think, for me even as a kid when I saw it.
Really? Oh, I always loved
it. I know the monsters are cool. I'll just give it that.
Barclay as a spider is just priceless.
This is a great graphic because actually, to me, that moment still held horror, and I think I may have remarked that I may have blocked out that because it's such a it's so
yeah
when he,
I mean, you really think that's it?
He sprays Dr. Crusher.
Suddenly you question, is Dr. Crusher in the movies? Did she die this episode?
It's terrible.
I don't understand what happened to Crusher. I don't remember her dying. What's going on?
I blocked it out. It was so horrifying.
Yeah. There's a V quality to this episode too. V didn't they also spit something out? Oh, that was much earlier. V was the early 80s.
V was my introduction to horror, and I think that's probably why I was traumatized. To this day, I fear. I have an irrational fear of aliens invading our planet. I think much like the clown.
Well, you should.
What happened? That's what Stephen Hawking said, right?
Right.
He said we should be afraid of the aliens, not we shouldn't embrace them. Well,
he thinks Carl Sagan was wrong. You shouldn't have put that damn disc on there. Why'd you put our address? We don't want them to find us.
I think that was Stephen Hawking older, retreating into his hermitage more than anything. Journey's End, we talked about this episode, and had some revelations about it that I just thought, for some reason, I thought this was the end of Wesley's journey, that he was gone, and we realize that he does return in Nemesis. It's not like a subcut. I imagined that what I saw in Nemesis was like a director's cut or something like that. I didn't think that the original theatrical release had Wesley in it, but it does. So
it does.
It made me
he
wonder.
Just doesn't speak, I don't think, right?
Right. But this episode illustrates that, in fact, Wesley doesn't just go off with the Traveler. He decides to remain on this planet, is what happens. And so the last time we see
with the Traveler.
Right. Well, with the Traveler to learn various various things. I would like to see Wesley come back more and more because of this episode and also the appearance in Nemesis, and also just because I really like personally I really like Will Wheaton. I think he's trying really hard to be a great person, and he's doing a good job. But I want to see Will Wheaton reprise his role as Wesley Crusher, and I want to see something awesome like the next one of the things that I liked about All Good Things is that the anti-time timeline suggests that ships can travel at warp 13, which tells me that they've broken the warp barrier in some way, even though it was broken before in the original series, but they rebroke the warp barrier. It suggests that, and I would love to see Wesley be a part of some kind of advanced form of travel being introduced into the universe. It would be really cool to see him working on that, perhaps with Geordi. It'd be great.
Yeah, I think the earlier seasons definitely laid down great potential for the character, and although I think ultimately it was the right decision for him to leave the show and to come back as just an occasional guest star to show his growing up and his progress. I definitely believe that some final season for Picard should involve a reunion of the family that was created in this show, which is Crusher, Picard, and Wesley.
Would you be completely kind of against and horrified if Wesley ended up being a protagonist?
What do you mean?
What if he uses his like kind of knowledge and powers in rather not like quite Sith?
You mean
level,
antagonist to Picard?
Oh, did I say that? I meant antagonist.
You said protagonist.
I did say protagonist, but I meant if he was an evil villain, an antagonist. Correct. Would it upset you?
I would. That I mean, if
he has
I
the
think
potential
everything
to
done
become
well,
an evil genius.
I can accept everything done well, but I think I would be a sad thing. Like I think I said it in the discussion. Wesley is part of Gene Roddenberry's final contribution to Star Trek. The idea of this character, and I think the character embodies a lot of the optimism that Gene Roddenberry had as a young man. So I would not warm to the idea right away. I mean, obviously anything written well, if it's written well, then I'll accept it. But
I was just exploring an idea, but I will say that I think that Will Wheaton could pull it off. But I don't think like.
Oh yeah.
I can't believe I said protagonist when I meant antagonist. But as an antagonist, I think he'd be very. And I meant to use antagonist because I like that word more than villain. Maybe he's not quite a villain, but just someone who has very different ideals from his mother, who's in Starfleet as a captain, and his adopted father, Jean-Luc, who is retired.
Well, we saw that in this episode where he's he's not exactly citing.
The seeds of that were in this episode, exactly.
Right. Two more things about this episode. This is another episode in prep for the movie, as we learned in the book by Nemesic. They're kind of writing Wesley off.
Oh,
so
that's right.
We don't have to have him in the movies. And then the other thing worth mentioning is that, again, we see the Cardassians. They are the looming bad.
Wesley is basically spending time with the kind of, if I'm not mistaken, the kind of like the genesis of the Maquis here, or like among the Maquis factions here, right? So yeah, I definitely think he's going into darker territories. It would be, he's sitting at the table of his friend's wedding in Nemesis, and that's very important. But it is a shame that there's no kind of juice behind that cameo, or that appearance, and like that we don't know a lot about Wesley,
the context of what he's been doing or whatever.
Been doing. Yeah, so I think he can get some of that in Picard for sure. Very cool. Good discussion points. Next we what did we give this episode? Did we like it? I don't remember.
I liked it. Yeah, I liked it.
This episode I really want to like. I don't remember if I liked it a lot, but it was a good try.
Well, here we have another family-oriented episode.
It's true, and we have
Alexander,
this, like, timey-wimey stuff happening again, and it's surrounding Worf. Worf seems to be at the center. Worf might be the true cause of humanity's end, and Q had it all wrong. Like, there's a lot of temporal variance occurring around Worf. I feel.
Well, I want to point out that at this point, we're near the end of the season. By my notes, Data's got 4 solid episodes that are about him. And he's tied with Worf. Worf has 4 episodes that are really Worf episodes. And he's pretty much... he's this, I guess, the second or the third most... I don't know what you want to call it. The character with the most exposition put upon him in this season.
What do you think? What do you think of the likelihood of, in the Picard outcome, we'll call it, of Worf being a governor and he's left Starfleet?
No.
You think he's still in Starfleet?
Deep Space Nine, I think,
establishes
leaves him. Yeah, I think Deep Space Nine leaves him within. I don't know. He could be with the Klingon. I forget, in Deep Space Nine, isn't he like a liaison between...
I think an interesting twist would be if he were the governor of a Klingon colony in Federation space. Not necessarily...
I don't see him as a governor.
I see him as an ambassador. I like the idea of Ambassador Worf a lot.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe.
But
perhaps.
Admiral Worf would be a most excellent outcome for Worf as well. I think he would help Starfleet to be strong, of course, among other things.
I just realized I'm getting my continuity wrong. Well, no matter what happens in Deep Space Nine, he does return to the Enterprise. Nemesis is after
that's right.
Deep Space Nine. So where we leave him is a Nemesis, where he's on board the Enterprise. He stays with Picard. And according to the novel, the prequel novel to the Picard show, he is the captain of the Enterprise.
Oh, then that's excellent. I want to see Captain Worf of the Enterprise then, for sure. I'm all for that.
But that was back then. That was when Picard first left the Enterprise.
That's a fair outcome for poor Worf, who they were the hardest on in the entire series. There's no doubt that Worf got turned down.
So now they're firing photon torpedoes left and right, man.
Hey, in the E, you can't. The E is such a great ship. I've grown
photon torpedoes.
I've grown so much. The E is kind of a ship that I see designed for Worf. Like, she fits him well. She's a great ship for Worf. He would captain her beautifully. She has the agility of a Klingon bird of prey.
And she's got those quantum torpedoes, man.
Yeah, she's got the ferocity of like a D7, Katinga class. Speaking of which, did I show you my Katinga? Have you seen?
Let me see.
Have you seen this? Hold on, let me see if I
Oh
have to
my
override
gosh,
the.
look at
Hold
that.
on, let me override the AI here. Oh,
That's
here we go.
huge. Is that an eagle mouse?
It is. It's definitely that,
Wow.
and it's one of their most beautifully made. This one I highly recommend if you like seamless models that appear to be seamless and hand painted. This one feels really that's
Are
unsolicited,
they
by
in
the way.
scale with the old
I
toys?
think so. Hold on, let me
Let me get. I have a Klingon.
although they're in scale with each other a little, I think. I don't remember the scales of the Enterprise and the. Here, let me get this out here. Look, Doctor. We're now playing with toys. we're now we're now playing with our toys, Doctor. But look, they seem to be in scale. Do you see that?
I think they're more or less in scale with the old toys, right?
And also, I think they're more or less in scale with their photographic counterparts in the films.
Because I see. I'm trying to look at where you're the size of. Yeah.
Look at this
Yeah, I think
maneuver the
they're more-
Enterprise is about to make. Uh-oh.
Oh
Watch
no!
out.
Shields
Ta-ta.
up! Shields up! Oh.
I don't know what I just did there, but it was fun.
Certainly three-dimensional thinking.
Certainly three-dimensional thinking. I've been thinking a lot about what you said in our discussion in All Good Things. Audience, we're obviously in the continuity of this. We're fresh off our discussion. That's great. Look at that. That's
Okay.
the TNG era
Yes.
version of the Katinga, right?
I believe so.
That was the one thing I will say as looking at TNG as a whole that I don't think that the D7 style, as I recall, ever made it into an episode, and if it did, I've forgotten. So it didn't play as prominent
I don't remember.
role.
Yeah, I don't think so.
All right, so Firstborn was pretty interesting.
Not.
Yeah, I don't. This is another episode.
More family.
More family. This is another episode that, like, we were kind of a little baffled about how it came into existence, and then we learned that the idea came from a discussion with Sir Patrick Stewart, or at least that's
Correct.
what the word on the street is, right? On the internet street.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Patrick Stewart himself. I wonder if we'll have that character return.
I would love
Picard.
it. I would love it if Damon Bach is still after.
There's this creature that hates me.
And I hope that Jean-Luc says that exact line in the episode.
That's crazy, man.
It would be. I think, we talked about this earlier, but done well, I think it could be a funny nod to this episode. It had a lot of interesting possibilities, and it reminded me of Star Trek 2, and it reminded me of Kirk's relationship with David, and that was kind of like a neat thing. So I liked that the episode harkened in some way to another time. Hold on, you got to show your ship before.
Oh, okay. Here we go. I was actually putting in batteries. I don't remember if the batteries work or
Oh,
not.
this is an actual toy.
Yeah. That's what I was.
Cool.
Yeah, I was trying to
No,
figure
it's
out
not
if
that
they were in
big.
scale with the Eagle Moss.
They would be, because that ship was much bigger than the Enterprise A.
It's really cool.
So yes, I think that ship would be much bigger than the A.
So back to the episode sucked, and
I don't think I
Oh.
thought it sucked. There
Wait.
you go. I think I liked Bloodlines. This was the episode that the Enterprise gave birth to an entity. So we're gonna skip that one too.
It still works. No. Oh yeah. Emergence sucks. And
all right. What about preemptive strike? I don't think you and I spoke about this episode, right?
no, that's the Ensign Rowe episode.
Yes.
So we have another episode, another farewell to a character, an extended member of the cast, and
who everyone would have loved and enjoyed if she were, in some way more in Star Trek. But she went on to do an amazing series called Battlestar Galactica. I thought that was her next breakout moment in my remembrances.
She was prior. I think at the time she was on a show called Homicide.
Oh, that's right.
Which is a wonderful show with Andre Braugher and who's that guy, that comedian who he's also on SVU and I forget what his name is. He has I can't remember. But Yafet Koto is on that show.
Right.
But she was on that show, and I think that was actually the she decided to go with that rather than Deep Space Nine.
I think that was a good choice. Michelle
that was a good
Forbes
choice. She was excellent on the show.
She was great. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
But
what's the graphic? I didn't see the graphic.
It didn't come up? Hold on.
Nope.
Look. Oh, there we go.
Great job, Gary. Wow. There we go. Michelle Forbes, ladies and gentlemen.
She also played another character in Star Trek in the going back to the Loxana Troy's performance that you mentioned earlier. She's David Ogden Steyer's daughter, who is completely
right.
So she got to play opposite Majel Barrett, and she was great in that episode. I remember her being a compelling character.
I have a question. I don't know if this came up in your discussion. What about Ensign? Well, obviously she wouldn't be an ensign anymore. I would hope not. But what about Roe returning in Picard?
I think we did talk about it, and it was pretty, if I recall correctly, it was pretty unanimous that it would be great to see her back in Picard.
Great. I think so too.
Yeah.
I feel this episode, her first episode showed a unique bond between her and Picard. And this episode, I think, was...
The Ensign Rowe storyline ages really well, too. It's still interesting to me after all these years.
Yeah.
And it does feel like a lost opportunity. So in a way, that in and of itself is a good reason to explore that character more.
Yeah, I would love to see Ensign... Well, she's not Ensign, but whatever rank she is. I would love to see Roe return to Picard, and and it was great to see her one last time here.
Oh, I got to remind you. So potentially she's a Fenris Ranger or something like that, because at the end of this episode she makes the hard choice she decides to lead the Maquis, because the Maquis, we called him Papa Maquis on the episode, but the Maquis she was assigned to observe or spy on actually died in her arms and pleaded with her to be the next leader of the Maquis. So he was completely hoodwinked and fooled and never thought that she was a spy, or, which I like better, he knew, but he also knew that she was the perfect person to lead the Maquis. And so I think the missed opportunity so I think the missed opportunity is, again, because she chose to do, we couldn't get the star, right? Which is fine. Again, we're not angry about any of that, but we're saying, I guess the real missed opportunity is to have her been a face to the Maquis, because I can't remember anyone except like Eddington, perhaps, who stands out as a prominent face to the Maquis in Deep Space Nine. But I do rewatch it inebriated, so there's a huge handicap of mind when I'm watching Deep Space Nine.
Sisko has a friend.
Right, isn't that who?
That's not Eddington, though. No, Sisko has a friend who ends up... There's a two-parter where he has to kind of hunt down his friend, and it's a really well-known actor. He's in The Man Who Fell to Earth with David Bowie.
I think that the Maquis and the Fenris Rangers are interesting because they represent something that's not necessarily the same as it was in the 90s when these shows were made, but certainly terrorism and the idea of like terrorizing people to get, through to get your message heard or noticed is something that's trending for lack of a better word, but it's more commonplace, I think, than it was at the time of this episode. Certainly this is pre 9/11, so it would be a great thing for Star Trek to return to that in a current running show, like a show that's supposed to be the most current of Star Trek. And it is possible that we'll see some things like this in Discovery. In the trailers, there's there's this like idea of a crumbled Federation. I feel like I'm living in a Federation that's crumbling right now, and it's like something what I'd love to see my fiction do is give me like hope that like on a personal level, I'd love to see hopeful stories of a Federation that does not crumble, but and I'm still hopeful, truly, but but I think that Michelle Forbes could still bring that edge and that kind of like performance to a role that like illustrates that real life thing that's happening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no,
among others. Among others.
And then that's when the next episode is the last episode.
All Good Things, which we talked about.
We just talked about.
I want to show that I used this graphic because we did it all as one episode, but there were alternates. So this was the part 1 graphic, and this was the part 2 graphic. So I love that we get to show all of them off here.
That's nice.
On this. So thank you. I mean, I think that's really cool. So audience, you can go. Oh, that was the graphic for the season 6 recap. Look, we're going into. There's some strays in here that no one's seen, but yeah, Gary does a beautiful job at. I mean, look at these graphics.
Yeah.
All right, enough of that.
So,
so we reached All Good Things, and I just want to recap really quickly that for me it was the pièce de résistance. It was the master stroke. It was like the final kind of like signature to an era of Star Trek, which I like to consider the Gene Roddenberry era. So that's how.
Yeah, you said that yesterday.
Yeah, so that's kind of like my final.
Excellent. Yeah.
That's my final word on All Good Things, and I think it does a great job at closing this out. And then from this point on, it's a new era. I'm not talking about
it's the Berman era.
Yeah, I'm not talking about timelines or anything like that. I think
it's the Berman era.
Yeah, we go into Berman. We would definitely go into the Berman era. Actually, if I'm not mistaken, if I remember correctly, Generation says a film by Rick Berman or something like that, right? Like he gets this awesome credit. Yeah, it's like crazy. So
I don't remember.
Or produced by. It says like a film produced by Rick Berman. Like he gets a nice credit during that champagne flying across, which it's like now you think of it, it is like a celebration. Yeah. It's like he's the producer. It's awesome.
Yeah. So I think we had a lot more characters return this season than we have in any other previous season, and it's understood why. I mean, we had a lot of
bowing out,
sign-offs,
right.
A lot of bowing out, a lot of saying, okay, this is where they're left and all that stuff.
We didn't see Tony Todd, Worf's brother, did we, in the season?
Nope. No,
I would love that.
Other
of
brother.
Course, I have to express my biggest lament, which I always somehow magically was able to write her in. But Guinan is not in season 7, and I always
Guinan is not.
This is to me one of the most mind-blowing things ever, because I just took her for granted and assumed she was there, and I don't know why.
And she's even on the cover of the novelization. She's here.
Yeah.
On the cover, she's
I
right
think that's a shame and a missed opportunity. I think that not to scold anyone. I know every situation's difficult, but you should have tried harder. You should have tried harder to get Whoopi Goldberg back back in the finale.
But to be fair, she is in the film.
She is awesome in the film.
She's in the film, and she plays.
I would say they
a vital
elevate
part.
Guinan to an interesting new level
Yeah.
of. She's like Yoda. She's the Yoda of Star Trek.
Oh, you're right. Yeah. To be fair, so that's true. That's a return that was. Yeah, I felt that was lacking in this season.
It would be cool if that's one of the things that you could look back on and kind of. I think that's a great consolation prize. I do protest still that we didn't get Guinan in season 7, but if you're gonna get Guinan back, it's got to be on the big screen. And it was awesome to see Whoopi Goldberg in Star Trek, and I think it was very exciting at the time. I remember.
Yeah. Also, I wish Vosh would have returned one more time.
Yep.
I would have liked to have seen Vosh.
I think she may have already returned on Deep Space Nine by this time as well, or maybe that's later. I can't remember, but she does return on Deep Space Nine, so that's nice that we see Vosh again there.
But I feel that now, by the same token, this season was clearly paying attention once again to the Picard Crusher dynamic. So maybe that was a conscious decision. Is like, Vosh is not his girl. Let's go back to Crusher.
Well, Vosh seems to have, according to Deep Space Nine, anyways, it seems like Vosh chose to just cross the ultimate line into, I don't know what category you want to say, but into crime. In a sense, she's basically goes around with Q. Whether she's Indiana Jones or not, she's going around with Q, looting and like interfering and like changing destinies, and so she kind of, I don't know. There's like a element of Vosh
that's what makes her fun.
It makes her fun.
That's what makes her a good
But maybe
foil.
she stays away from Picard because she knows she can't corrupt the old admiral. It's like it's kind of like what 7 of 9 sentiment is. She kind of says all the right things to poor Jean-Luc, who knows clearly something's up, but he just has to surrender to his own, kind of dignity or whatever. And so he has to trust her, but she betrays his trust right after and kills Bjayzl, who could have been someone. No, I'm just kidding. She was awful. I think Bjayzl was just awful. But it does evoke, for me, it does evoke that kind of vibe.
Yeah. Oh, and then, of course, the last episode we saw even more returns, because we saw the return of O'Brien.
Right.
In the flashback, we saw the return of Tasha.
Right.
Actual Tasha as opposed to
like
Sela.
No, exactly. Like that is Tasha Yar. Like,
right.
it's a very poignant. It's very poignant.
Right. I would have liked to have seen. What's the other doctor?
Dr. Solar?
Yes, I would like to have seen Dr. Solar one more time.
Did we? I can't remember. Did Dr. Solar come back? I love Dr. Solar.
She's only appeared once.
So she's never came back. Once. And of course she's played by Susie Plaxton, which is amazing.
Right. I would have liked to have seen that just because because of that. I was like, she looks the same, I mean.
So I don't remember our ratings for past seasons, but we have a tradition of rating the season on a scale of 1 through 10. So I'll go first. And I'm just going to say that season 7 is a very strong 9 for me.
Whoa. Wait. It's not a 10? It's not an infinity?
I lamented about this during our discussion of I don't remember which episode, but I just lamented. I said when in my imagination I was coming into my rewatch expecting it to be all 10s, like so this is something that like Starfleet Boy, this is something that like I think Starfleet Boy just had to be real about it. And so to be fair, I think 9 is the highest season rating. Maybe I gave a 10 to a season. Which season would I have given a 10 to? I don't think I have.
Season 3, whatever season had Best of Both Worlds.
You think I gave the whole season a 10? I might have. I don't remember. We'll have to go back and look at our season discussions and see what those ratings were. But
let me. Okay, let's. Are there any? What classics are there in this season? And you know how Yesterday's Enterprise is a classic. Best of Both Worlds is a classic. What classics would you come away with in this season?
Oddly enough, Sub Rosa is, for a very different reason, is a classic.
Is a classic? Okay, right.
That's the first one that comes to mind after, of course, All Good Things. I think All Good Things steals the show, unfortunately, for the whole season. Because like I told you, I've seen All Good. I haven't seen this season 100 times. I've seen All Good Things 100 times. To me, that's the season. Like that's the like that's like it all comes together in that beautiful ending. And I think like the last time I often compare things to Return of the Jedi because I hold it in such high esteem as a closing of a chapter, if you will, now more than ever since we have sequels, of course. But at one time it was the known end of the Padishah Empire, to quote another mythology. But it to me it was like a perfect kind of way to end a story. I was like, this is great. Just like everything's great. You know what comes next. You're satisfied. And I felt like if I knew and I was excited about Star Trek TNG and this crew and these performers and this show going into its film iterations, because we haven't talked about those, but I think they stand on similar height pillars as a set to the original series films. I think they have their I can't rate them against each other. In other words, they're to me they're on their own set of pillars.
I agree.
So I agree that this crew needed to go to that. So I think that's why, to me, All Good Things is what I keep coming back to on this season, is because that kind of wraps up beautifully the story of TNG.
So you think this is that's the only classic in the season?
It's because of its prominence. It's like and again, I can't believe it, but Sub Rosa gets the 9,
like is it a 9 because it's mostly a 9 for the finale, and then the rest of the season is what knocks it down from a 10? I mean, it weighs down the.
I'll only add that each of the other episodes, the ones that I had forgotten about perhaps or whatever, all have like little hallmarks or like moments that tell you really great things about the characters. Like, regardless of what you think of Interface, there are some interesting moments between Geordi and Data and Geordi and his mother. Again, that was like a personal thing, but I feel like it resonates with more than just like this person, right? Like whatever. But it's like a thing that like that's the thing that probably I think overall as a season, if I had endless time, if I lived in the Nexus perhaps to tie it into the future of where we're going, if I lived in the Nexus, I would watch season 7 over and over again because overall it's satisfactory. I would have placed, if I had to do a shuffling, which you can kind of do with Star Trek, I would have placed the second Moriarty episode up in the next to last, like probably right before Ensign Row. If I could,
certainly would have liked that as opposed to Emergence.
And I'm not just saying that because of our wonderful cameo.
No, I understand what you're saying. I will. To me, it's a 6 because.
Oh wow!
I guess it's
it just hit me like a ton of bricks. No, come on, you got to give this.
It's slightly. I mean, if an average, the average is 5. 5 is average, right? So this is slightly better than the average because
I wish we kept better track of our previous ratings, because now I really want to know what you gave a higher rating to, because I can't remember, unfortunately. My old man status.
I'm sure I gave a 7 to one of the other ones, but this does have I don't think the finale is a 10, but I certainly think that Pegasus is a classic. I think that one, hands down.
Oh, see, I forgot that Pegasus was even in, but I think Pegasus is a classic among the entire series.
Exactly.
It, like, transcends.
That's what I
just the
mean.
season,
That's
yeah.
what I mean. It's what transcends.
Oh,
like
I
what,
was kind of on the level of what's a classic from this season. Pegasus would win that category too, of course, but
no, that's what I meant. Is what are the classics? Because if there are some seasons that have a lot of classics that you're like, oh my god, it has Future Imperfect, it has Relics.
But I don't hear about
like,
Pegasus
holy cow,
talked about.
That means this season is obviously better.
As much
than
as I like
other
Pegasus,
seasons.
though, we're the only ones that talk about Pegasus. Everyone talks about Sub Rosa. How did Sub Rosa become such something that everybody knows about? How did that happen?
I don't know.
But it's true.
There's actually a YouTube video that just premiered like a couple of days ago, and I think it's the 10 most inappropriate things that have ever happened on Star Trek, and they have an image from Sub Rosa. So I just have no idea. We are probably looked at as absolute loons because we
like that episode.
we actually like the episode.
Oh my goodness.
Or I think a better way of putting is we don't hate the episode.
I definitely failed to remember Pegasus now, but I should have remembered it. So it definitely goes up there.
Pegasus is a great episode.
True.
And then there's episodes that are, and I think Genesis is considered a minor classic.
I agree with that too.
There
can be only one classic, Doctor. There can be only one classic in season 7. I apologize, Doctor, but there can be only one classic, and it is all good things.
No. Lower Decks, which is not, it's not a personal favorite of mine, but a lot of people love Lower Decks.
It's
celebrated as.
You're proving my reasons for why it should get a 9. You should raise your.
No,
rating.
what I'm saying is that it's got some classics, so it's better
right.
than the average season. So that's why it's got the 6.
It's got a lot of.
But
classics.
then it's no.
According to you,
it's got about 4, but we're talking about out of how many? Out of 26 episodes?
That's true.
The rest of them kind of like, other than those, I can't really say.
I like that you didn't bring
there's
Gambit
a lot of,
into your list of classics because you're trying
Gambit
to
is not a classic.
It's not a classic.
It's not.
That's good.
It's, I mean, I have personal classics, but I know that are not considered.
What is your favorite season 7 episode?
It's a toss-up between. It's a toss-up between Genesis and Masks.
Whoa! Wait, Masks or Genesis?
Yeah,
that's amazing. By the way, both Masks. You said that Genesis was like a classic. I actually agree with you. I'm not all kidding aside, but Masks 2 would have to go in that pillars of classics, but I don't know. I always felt like when it came out, it was misunderstood. Perhaps maybe it's more understood now.
Which
but
one?
I always it was always kind of a toss up.
Well, that's a personal one,
right? It's a personal
just as it is
one,
for you.
True.
I don't think Masks is looked upon. I think actually Masks is probably. I've read people kind of make fun of it, so I don't think Masks is up there for a lot of people.
I'd love to know what our audience thinks about the kind of episodes that we think are a little bit more obscure, but also classics. Obscure cult classics among the Star.
Cult classics.
Yeah, it's
personal classics.
Yeah, personal classics. Yeah, it would be very cool.
Yeah.
So you're gonna hold fast to your 6 rating on the season.
Yeah, because I think there's a lot of episodes. I think most of the season is not that memorable. There's just a general feeling of everybody's family shows up, and I certainly never had these episodes. I didn't have any of these episodes on a tape. You know how I would tape stuff? I never kept them.
You don't have. You had All Good Things though.
No, I did not.
But you didn't keep it. Oh, okay.
I didn't keep it. I had. I
definitely taped All Good Things. It was an event worthy of tape for me.
I kept Encounter at Farpoint, but I didn't keep.
So you have Encounter at Farpoint with all the commercials from back then?
Not anymore. I had it. Now, what I did have was, and this is funny because this is the original text I sent you this morning, is like, do you want to do the documentary? What I did have was a documentary. Remember, the documentary happened right before.
Netflix. Yeah, it's on Netflix.
But when we watched it,
it was before the finale.
Exactly, and that's what I wanted to talk about. Is it was really truly an event because it was not just 2 hours of the finale. It was 3 hours because you had that special that was leading you into it.
Reward, actually.
It was a complete total like next generation love fest. It's like, oh look, here's the best of Next Generation.
I hope my episode was a love fest, and I hope this was a love fest.
Yes. The episode yesterday was definitely a love fest. Okay, so we've ranked the seasons. We've talked about.
We have to get our act together. I'm going to have to go back and do the research and find out what every rating Starfleet Boy has given as a group to each season. So I have to do some math. I might assign this to
database boy
person. It's database person is no longer binary, so I have to learn how to address database person. So,
okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So that's how I get to retain my binary status. Starfleet Boy. And actually I'm a man. I'm a man.
I'm a man.
She's a man. That was the exact line from Austin Powers that I used to love to say when I was a young person. It was one of my favorite lines. By the way, you'll also have noticed, and I'm doing this in solidarity with the peaceful movement that is going on across the United States. I'm no longer in Starfleet. I'm a visitor henceforth. So I'm a civilian. Starfleet Boy is civilian status for the immediate future. We'll see if we get reinstated.
I don't have any badges.
It's okay, but now you know. And my opinions are my own, and none of my co-hosts.
Understood.
I forgot that part.
I was going to say something about the... okay. So the other thing we usually did was what character from this season would we like to see return next season? Obviously, there is no next season. Right. So I will say this is... what characters from this season would you like to see show up in Picard?
Well,
and I think we already mentioned.
Aside from the main characters, I think I would love to see Nursagawa kind of come back into play somehow, or at least like a catch up. I don't know. It's like these are like just definitely. If I had to rank the order, I would say definitely Laren returning is probably top priority, but definitely like Nursagawa. I would love to see Chief O'Brien catch up with the O'Briens, both he and Keiko and Molly and what was the young
Molly?
Their boys? No, but they had was it Milo?
I don't remember.
Oh, gosh, such a bad Trekkie. Anyways, the O'Brien family deserves, I think, a revisit. We don't talk enough about O'Brien because, of course, he gets so much love in Deep Space Nine. His character really comes into his own, but he is also a part of Star Trek from its beginnings. He was in Encounter at Farpoint, Colomini, and he reprises his role in more ways than one. So it's pretty cool what happens. So I would love to see him back in Picard as a priority kind of return.
Now, I know the answer is no, it's not going to happen, but I would like to know more about Lore.
Oh, right.
I probably, chances are, we're not going to see Lore. but I would at least like to know what happened to Lore.
I think we will find out. I have a real strong suspicion, is all I'll say. I don't have any inside sources. I just have strong suspicions that Lore won't be just never mentioned again. I think Lore will come up. I have a strong feeling.
Another one that I wish, but
it.
unfortunately the actor has passed away. But I would love to have seen Paul Sorvino show up again as Worf's brother. But that sadly will not happen. And just going down the list.
Could we get Mira Sorvino in Star Trek as a return to... Because they did have a child, Paul Sorvino's character. The reason he stayed with the colony that they transplanted was because...
with Cassidy Yates.
With Cassidy Yates, of all people, exactly. So that's an interesting way to bring that actor back. But yeah, so wouldn't it be interesting if Mira Sorvino could reprise, in a weird way, her father's contribution to Star Trek with a role?
Now, how about this? What about Barclay?
100%
in Picard. What is Barclay like?
Yeah.
Now,
Picard opened me up to the idea that not everyone stayed in Starfleet, even though it makes me kind of sad. But like, I don't know what is.
Oh, Barclay I think he's in Starfleet.
He's 100%
definitely
at the Daystrom Institute. I think we've only seen one branch also of the Daystrom Institute. By the way, the Daystrom Institute does get a lot of mention in All Good Things, because in the past, the device that they used to initiate the scan or whatever it is on the anomaly hadn't been built yet during Encounter at Farpoint. And one of the coolest scenes was that Data says there's a theoretical device that the Daystrom Institute is working on, which hasn't been invented. And I think this like plays into my notions of what Q was talking about Picard transcending, is that Picard was able to then use that information to like alter the timeline in a sense, in both timelines, to perhaps acquire this device. And when they get to present Picard, he says, Data, do we have this on the Enterprise? And Data's like, yes, we do. So like it was a case of like the Doctor programming the sonic screwdriver in the past, and then in the future he had the solution, right? So I love that kind of detail, and I probably you look upset. I don't know if I like illustrated how cool that is, but I just love that moment, and I think that's something that Barclay could be doing, is working at the Daystrom Institute. For sure. He should have been in the finale. I think that's a regret also, by the way.
Yeah.
Dwight Schultz we're talking about, by the way. It would be cool to get Dwight Schultz back on screen in Star Trek, but he did have a lot of shining moments in
season 7.
Well, not just that, but also he's pretty prominent, if I'm not mistaken, in Voyager as a returning character.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think Barclay gets a lot, and he definitely comes back in first. We know he's back. Dwight Schultz is back in First Contact, so we know that Barclay at least serves aboard the Enterprise still by Nemesis.
Yeah, but I'll always feel that Barclay is definitely part of the Next Generation family.
100%.
And I would love
that's
to see
just it too, is that like what's cool about the Next Generation at this point, and I think another reason for the 9, is that you do really get a sense of who the extended family, so to speak, is. One of the things that is sad to me about Star Trek Picard is that in Generations, Picard loses his real family in the hope of like continuing the legacy or the which was something that's very important to him. It was instilled into him from his childhood, is to keep the Picard legacy continuing.
The family line,
the family, and so I always thought that by Nemesis you really felt that he had chosen his new family that these were in his mind, these were the Picards. These were all his, like, brothers and sisters and nieces and nephews and all kinds of like relationship type things, and you really do feel it by the end in Nemesis. And so I thought, sitting at, again, another reason why that moment is so poignant, when Picard does decide to join his family at the table at the end of All Good Things, it kind of like is reinforced now by what has come after, which is really wonderful. But that's what saddened me about Picard, is that I didn't get the sense that, I feel like the anti-timeline was a warning of what not to do, and he definitely didn't heed the warning of abandoning his family. It seems like no, he's not in touch with that. He really does truly go into a hermitage for like 20 years and doesn't really talk to anyone, which is, not what I expected from Jean-Luc or hoped.
Well, I'll say this. One of the things, and I guess this is a point of disagreement, is and I know that the show was trying to build up to that moment, and I agree, it's a great moment, but I don't buy it. I still think at the end of the day, Picard is the person that we saw in the earlier seasons, where he doesn't like children, he wants some distance from people. He's not the huggy type that we ended up seeing in Picard. When Sean says that he played it a different way, I agree with that. So I don't know. I find that, in a way, Picard, the show, starts off with a more authentic Picard to me, but then by the time the season ended, we kind of came back to the Picard we saw at the end of the show, where he's like, "Oh, I've learned my lesson. Family's important, and let me hug people again." And I just don't think that's really him. I don't think that that's where the disagreement is at all for me. I think that you're absolutely right, that it's not in his core being. But what I like is that it's okay to, first of all, be a hermit. There's nothing wrong with it, right? Like that's totally fine, and all that. I'm just saying that, like, I think that just from a character's perspective, I was really enjoying the idea that Jean-Luc would one day find a family. And so it is heartbreaking. So yes. So I mean, like, I'm not saying that I disagree with the choice. I actually like it. I was told, as you know, I gave 10s to every episode of Picard. I was totally enjoying it. I was like, did you?
Into it, yeah, just about. I think there was a couple of episodes that got lower ratings.
I know you did.
Like,
I know you did.
It's like
I know you did.
But I would say that, it just saddens me, I think, because, but of course, what's the better story, right? Like, obviously, it's the one that's saddening me because it makes me reflective.
It's, in a way, it's an echo of Kirk, but I feel that with Kirk, the way his story ended up being told, I think it was told a little more. I don't know if honestly is the right word, but the scene in Generations where Scotty is saying this and Chekhov is saying that, and Kirk is taken aback as to, like, when did Sulu find time for a family? And Scotty's like, he made the time because. He that's what he, what you always say, if you believe something's important, you make the time. And then Kirk kind of realizes, holy crap, I never had, the family didn't happen. His son died, many years ago, and it's clear that he never, did any of those things. And the advice that, I don't know, in a way, the advice that he gives Picard is about not leaving the captain's chair, which Picard also doesn't follow. But
I love that.
I feel that
actually,
there's.
I really do love that. I've come to love it. I would definitely have loved it if he was dutiful and took Kirk's Kirk's warning, if you will, to heart. But I kind of love that Jean-Luc was like, that's mad. That's not for me. I needed him. I needed Kirk at that moment. He died anyways on the Enterprise B. This was his second chance to die. That is an interesting thing that we don't want to delve too deep into Generations, because this will become the Generations discussion.
Yeah. That's a discussion soon to come.
But I will say that I still protest with your rating of the season. I think you should give it a 7 at least, Doctor.
Are we gonna rate the series too? Are we gonna?
No, we can't do it. We have to get back to. I have to do the math, and we have to get back together, because I think we should do it based on our previous. We're not beholden to our previous ratings, but I think we should keep our previous ratings in mind.
No, I agree.
So I think we should return to that.
I am beholden to my ratings.
Okay, very good.
I hope I'm not going to eat my words. I gave previous seasons 10s, and I don't even remember.
So
Season 1 was a 10.
It'll just, if nothing else, it'll show why we're such good friends, because we're both we're both susceptible to the same stirrings of the humors, Doctor. and that's what friendship is all about, isn't it?
That is true. That is true.
And in the spirit of friendship, because this will probably be released sometime between today and the rest of this week, so I just want to say that Star Trek is, I think, one of its core principles that I firmly believe is very evident is friendship. And so I just want to remind everyone out there that, like, friendship is not hard to achieve. It's a good thing. Look at me and the Doctor. We disagree on so much about Star Trek, and we're really good friends. So if that can happen, anything can happen.
That is true. That is true. You've put up with me for many, many years. And
I think it's the other way around, but I appreciate that you think of it that way.
That's the way it is.
You've been putting up with me.
No,
anyways, audience, thanks for putting up with
other people would agree with me too.
Audience, thanks for putting up with us on this exciting episode of Starfleet Boy, which is the true closing chapter of the season. So we've closed our episodic discussions, which I feel like I had a huge celebration, because those are like the meat and potatoes of what Starfleet Boy is. And now you get 7. This is our 7th seasonal discussion of Star Trek: The Next Generation. And so soon you will get our very first ever series complete discussion, because it can only happen when we reach this level, Doctor. Do you realize?
I'm now confused. What are we gonna do?
Our next episode is gonna be a series rating.
We're gonna do
whole series. Yes, there's one more discussion coming up. You already agreed to this, Doctor.
I thought we were just gonna do that here. I thought we'd no, really.
No, we got it. We got to do it. We got to do it. It's the first ever. Well,
the whole series? How do we encompass that?
We're not going to go episode by episode. We're just going to talk about what we rated each season. And then based on that, we're going to give our final rating for the whole Star Trek: The Next Generation as a series. Maybe we can rank it among all the other series. Maybe that's what we could do.
Can we do a top 10 episodes from the whole series? Our personal top 10.
Yes, I like that idea.
When is that?
It can happen right now. We could stop this video and we could do it right now. We could go and do the research and reconvene in an hour.
I need more than an hour for that. That's a lot.
All right.
That's a lot.
Well, we haven't signed off from this episode, so we got to do the sign off, and I'm gonna stop the recording.
Let's sign off. Okay.
And then we can talk about the brass tacks, Doctor.
Okay.
We could get into brass tacks.
Okay.
After we do that, all right. So, audience,
All
thanks
right.
for tuning in. Please subscribe. Please hit the like button. I hear it helps with the algorithm. And live long and prosper. We'll see you next time.